Hello, I'm Blaze, and welcome back to Warframe. The new update has dropped a lot of new weapons into our hands, and I'll probably never catch up at this point, but whatever. I'm going to start off with the Red Veil's offering with the Rakta Cernos, and compare it to the earlier base Cernos. The Rakta Cernos is a Red Veil themed bow based on the earlier Cernos, and comes along with a really shiny and unmistakable makeover. Being a Syndicate weapon, you can acquire the Rakta Cernos from the Red Veil themselves at the Exalted level, with 125,000 standing. But bear in mind that the new Syndicate weapons have one unified standout feature in that they all require a mastery rank of 12. This is the highest mastery rank weapon requirement in the game, and it's the first time any weapon has had a mastery rank requirement above 8 for an extremely long time. Alternatively, if the Red Veil isn't on good terms with you, you can instead trade for it with other players on the trade chat. But keep in mind that you must still meet the weapon's mastery rank requirement to do so, and like other tradable weapons, it must be completely unranked with no catalyst or formulas installed to be eligible for trade. The Rakta Cernos does share some similarity with its base counterpart, with its somewhat disappointing critical stats. At a 35% critical chance and a 2.0 times damage multiplier, compared to the Paris Prime with a 45% critical chance and the Dread with a 50% critical chance, allowing both of them to get critical chances above 100% and entering into the realm of red crits. Meanwhile, the Cernos and Rakta Cernos need to add critical delay to get above 100%, which I must say I would recommend against. However, the Rakta Cernos has been given its own standout features. The Rakta Cernos has been given a 50-point damage boost compared to the Cernos, putting it at a base damage of 250, spread between 225 impact damage and a small splash of puncture and slash damage at 12.5 each. This places the Rakta Cernos' base damage as the second highest among all bows, second to the Daikyu. And those aren't even the most interesting stats. The Rakta Cernos' charge time has been given a substantial boost, with a reported charge time of just 0.3. This compares favourably to every other bow, the base Cernos included, which have a charge rate of 1.0, basically allowing you to completely forgo any fire rate mods to get something else in its place instead. And the Rakta Cernos also has a reported reload time of 0.6 seconds. Yet another interesting feature that won't be apparent on paper is that the Rakta Cernos actually comes along with a faster projectile velocity than most other bows, almost as fast as the Daikyu projectiles. The arrows will still drop a bit at longer range, but the increased velocity makes it much easier to lead distant targets than compared to other bows, without even needing terminal velocity. Slightly more minorly, the Rakta Cernos also has a 15% status chance compared to the base Cernos, which has a 10% status chance. But much like the Daikyu, even though the Cernos is now the fastest bow around, slow fire rate weapons simply can't make use of status chance effectively between the comparatively long downtime between shots. This goes double if the weapon is a physical damage spread, meaning that you have a good chance to proc one of the significantly less useful impact, slash, or puncture effects than any of the significantly more useful elemental effects. Additionally, while the Cernos only comes along with a single V polarity, the Rakta Cernos gets not one but two extra innate polarities, bringing it up to 2 V polarities and 1 dash polarity, greatly reducing the effort required for additional formulas to max it out. Finally, like other Syndicate weapons, the Rakta Cernos comes along with the Blight effect built in. While the Rakta Cernos is equipped, Blight charges as the weapon gains affinity, visible via the Red Veil insignia above the ammo counter. When the gauge fills, the weapon discharges, dealing 1000 viral damage to all in-range enemies, along with a guaranteed viral status effect cutting their maximum health in half for the duration, grants your Warframe an energy recharge of 25% of the Warframe's base energy value, and gives your Warframe a 10% movement speed boost for 30 seconds. After discharging, the weapon will enter a short cooldown period, during which the Blight effect cannot be charged again. While its critical stats are still weak compared to other bows, the substantial base damage increase and near instant charge both go a long way to even the Rakta Cernos up compared to the Dread or Paris Prime. While impact is arguably the weakest physical damage type, with a large number of enemies resisting it, the added base damage helps even that out, and the ability to rapidly loose fully charged arrows by default gives the Cernos a unique character. And the fast arrow velocity compared to the Paris Prime or Dread makes it by far the most user-friendly of all the bows. Not to mention, the Blight radial effect is a nice bonus as well. At least as long as you're not in the wrong place at the wrong time on a Corpus spaceship. Modding the Cernos actually has a lot of room for variation, but here's what I do. As it has the main selling point of an extremely quick charge, I actually elect to go without any fire rate mods. On other bows, I would put on speed trigger or maybe even vile acceleration, but I found the Rakta Cernos simply doesn't need it, nor does it really need terminal velocity thanks to its already high projectile speed. Additionally, as a general rule for bows, I do not use heavy caliber. On most weapons it's a nice damage boost, but for bows it tends to really mess up their accuracy. Normally when you actually aim with a bow as opposed to rough unaimed shooting, the arrows are pinpoint accurate. But when equipping heavy caliber, this is no longer the case, and I got very tired of having arrows travel either side of my intended target. So I leave heavy caliber out. Other than those, standard elemental mods and crit mods apply. Not needing the fire rate mod and tossing out heavy caliber means that there are 4 other slots to play with, so I go with a full elemental build. You can also add in some other quality of life mods if needed, like arrow mutation or terminal velocity if you really wanted, or fast hands to get faster follow-up shots. The Rakta Cernos has the luxury amongst bows of actually having a decent amount of room for variance based on your personal preference. While on the subject of mods, however, I'm also going to briefly discuss the critical delay mod. While adding it will bring the critical chance above 100% combined with point strike, I personally feel it's a terrible idea. It almost feels like the mod is what Digital Extremes had in mind when looking at the additional dash polarity and the faster than normal draw speed, but no. Adding it on brings the Cernos' draw speed down to about the same rate as other bows, which then requires a fire rate mod added onto it to counteract the draw speed if you don't want the comparatively long delay to shoot your enemies. So suddenly you're using 4 mods just to get a small chance of red crits and leaving only 2 slots left over for elements. 1 slot if you use heavy caliber as well. I feel like doing so tries to make the Rakta Cernos a worse version of other bows while completely ignoring the stuff it does all on its own that gives it its own character. Obviously you might disagree and you're free to use whatever mods you want, this is all just my thought process. But personally I'm keeping critical delay far away from my Rakta Cernos. Looking back to the original Cernos, it wasn't in a very good place. It did sort of have its place. It was arguably an upgrade to the default Paris. The Paris has a base damage of 180 and a critical chance of 30% compared to the Cernos with 200 and 35% respectively. And the Cernos has a comparable build cost as well. In the early game, the difference between impact, slash and puncture damage, as well as enemy armor, doesn't matter so much either, so impact is fine. But as soon as the Paris Prime or Dread made their way into your hands, the Cernos was left squarely in the dust. Which is a shame because the Cernos' design actually looks pretty cool, even if it has those weird spike guard things on the sides that I don't really see the point of. But now, along comes the Rakta Cernos and gives this bow a breath of renewed life. It probably isn't going to beat the Paris Prime or Dread in the long run. While the Rakta Cernos has a much higher base damage, the others have much stronger crits and primary damage types that get significant bonuses to a lot of factions. But the Rakta Cernos does its own thing, being a speedy shooter and coming along with the ability to explode horrible biological agents in your enemies' faces. I suppose the Geneva Convention isn't really a thing anymore in the somewhat grim far future. And it is actually good enough to be a viable choice, even if the Dread and Paris Prime may objectively be better choices. But if we were all interested in objectively better, we'd all be running around with Boltor Primes. Thankfully that isn't happening. The Rakta Cernos is a perfectly reasonable offering. It's pleasantly shiny, has a cool back quiver, and it will be able to drop pretty much anything you'd want it to. It even has 3 mod polarities by default, so if somehow you've made it to Mastery rank 12 while being very tight with your formas, this will be very easy to get up to speed. So it gets a thumbs up from me. Thank you for watching my look at the Rakta Cernos. All comments are appreciated and I hope to see you around next time. For more content you can give a click down below to go to my video on the Twin Crocadas or my overview of Equinox. And as always, good luck, have fun, and take care.